Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? We'll ask everyone in the back of the room to have a seat. We're about to start our CFL Town Hall meeting, okay? All right. Any Toronto Argonauts fans in the crowd? Montreal Alouettes. I love the Alouettes. Let's hear it one more time. Alouettes. Hamilton Tiger Cats. Winnipeg Blue Bombers. All right, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, one more time. Riders. You know, everywhere I go, I find Saskatchewan fans. Everywhere I go. All right, let's keep going west. Edmonton Eskimos. A tepid round of applause for the Eskimos. Calgary Stampeders. BC Lions. I'm saving my second favorite team for last and coming back east. Ottawa. Future CFL Halifax fans. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Hollingsworth. I'm with TSN. I was just told a second ago that it's good to see you back in Halifax, correct? I've never left. I live on Lingby Avenue. I fly all over the country, all over North America, but I'm a Halifax guy, proud and true. I love being from Nova Scotia, and I love being from Halifax. I say it and I say it again, folks. We have great history, great tradition, great music, great tourist destinations. We have awesome food. We are a great place to visit. This is a great place to live. But you know what I like about us the best? The people. We are warm, we are hospitable, and we know how to give a maritime welcome. So ladies and gentlemen, please, with all that cheer you gave me a second ago, please welcome to the stage our CFL Commissioner, Randy Ambrosie, to the stage.
Now, big fellow, one of the things I've been doing, and I started it last year at the State of the CFL at Grey Cup, was I was going to be facing the media, which had been described to me as a little bit like volunteering to become a human piñata.
True.
So
True.
I said that I would take a picture, a selfie with myself and the media right at the very outset while we still really liked each other.
Good idea.
So if you don't mind, I'm just going to if you'll indulge me just for a quick moment. There we go. So we have a permanent record of our relationship.
By the way, he's traveled 20,000 kilometers around the country promoting his league, the CFL. You were in Hamilton last night?
I was in Hamilton last night.
How's it going, by the way? Give us we have some things we want to talk about.
Yeah,
it's been a busy time for you.
It's been fun. You know, just I think the biggest thing that we're committed to is making sure that football and the CFL is no longer a 6-month thing; it's a 12-month thing. You know, we have some of the finest athletes in the world play our game. So we have 2 seasons now. We have a business season and a football season. And during the business season, we want to be out talking about our game. We want to be connecting with our fans. We want to be asking for input. One of my goals, our goals as a league, is to be the most fan interactive league in the world. We've got things that we want to ask you today, get your feedback and input. But one of the things that I can say with great conviction, walking into this room, and all of your enthusiasm is so fantastic. But the enthusiasm for football here in the Maritimes, here in Atlantic Canada, is not unique to this region. I have been in 9 CFL cities, and in every city, the number one question, the number one topic of discussion is, when are we going to get a team in Halifax, and how quickly can we do it?
we have some themes we want to touch on when it comes to what you're hearing across the country and some of the issues you want to address with the fans. And we'll loop back to CFL in Halifax shortly as well. But when you look into the crowd and you see that reaction when you came on stage, you think what? That was pretty exciting.
It was very exciting, and so that's a good jumping in point to something that I think it's important we talk about. Look, while we wait for this franchise to happen, and we've got an amazing group of people that are working on this. You're going to meet Bruce and Anthony shortly, and their partner Gary. These are amazing men, and it's an honor to work with them and be talking about this project with them, and having had a chance to meet a number of your city councilors and to have spent some time with Mayor Savage. These are serious people who are committed to this, but until we put that final piece together and make this all official, I want you all to know this, not from myself and from CFL fans in the rest of Canada. You are part of the CFL. You have been and you will be and forever part of the CFL. And every time we talk about our league and every time we talk about our fans, the people of this great region will always be part of that conversation. And from this point going forward, road shows never happen without a trip to Atlantic Canada to make sure that we're connecting with all of you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have two open mics here in the room. So this is the town hall setting. We have some questions for the commissioner that were fed to us from fans who are in the audience or not here this afternoon. I'm going to read to you in a moment, let you respond. But while the commissioner does that, feel free to go to one of those microphones and ask him a question. And then after we address some of the macro issues surrounding the league, which these questions will address, we'll narrow our focus to CFL in Halifax. We'll bring up two special guests to the podium as well, and that may trigger even more questions from the audience as well. So there's an opportunity thematically to take it in a general direction through the league and wrap it up here in Halifax. So sir, if I may.
So can I?
Yes, sir, please do. Yes.
So one of the things that I've been trying to do is not just talk, but listen. So one of the most important questions that we will face as a league, and we're in the early stages of this conversation, is about this question of a season shift. And I'd like to make sure that all of you are on the record as it relates to this issue. So what we're talking about is advancing the Grey Cup from its traditional kind of last weekend in November spot. And by the way, up until about 1960, the Grey Cup was actually played in December. The Grey Cup actually was moved forward into November. So it's not as though we had kind of one date that's been permanent for the 105 Grey Cups we've played. That we have moved it before. What we're talking about is potentially moving it up a number of weeks, and the range is anywhere between 2 or 3, as much as say 4 to 5 weeks. The goal would be to play more of our season in the better weather of Canadian spring and summer, and beautiful autumn.
We have awesome weather here.
As opposed, right? That's okay. So, and I have gotten a range. I've gotten a range of feedback in BC where they have a dome. They were quite content where the season was. Can I ask by a show of hands? How many of you would like to or would support the idea of a season starting earlier and a Grey Cup earlier in the year? Okay. And then how many of you would like to see the Grey Cup stay just where it is? Okay, so that's about 80%, 85% are in favor of a season shift. And what I should tell you is, we are just gathering information. We're making sure we're talking to our fans. We don't want this to be a CFL decision. Ultimately, this has to be a decision that our fans want and support. But we also have an important conversation that we're going to have with our partners. TSN, who has been an amazing partner for our league and has taken our game into Canadian homes now as our partner for many years, and we look forward to many years to come. We would never even begin a serious conversation without them, but it is good to have your feedback on that as well. The second question I'd like to ask, just because it just tends to set a tone, is anyone aware of a more thankless job or a less thankless job than officiating? Does anyone know? Can anyone volunteer? Oh, okay, hold this young lady. Yes. Being a lawyer is less thankless? Someone said being the commissioner. I thought that was like, wow. Okay. That was depressing. Lawyers, commissioners, and officials. Officiating has come up, and at some point this morning, if you'll let me, I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the things. Darren Hackwood has taken over as the head of officiating at the Canadian Football League. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he's doing some really, bringing some really interesting thoughts to the table. So if you're interested in officiating, which most CFL fans are, more interested in talking about it when they don't think it's gone their way, the way by their team. But if you want to have that conversation at some point, we can do that as well.
For sure. By the way, before we get to a couple of questions, there are a couple of elephants in the room we'll have to address, but this one right here. Sir, this is the Mini Grey Cup. That's my friend Wally Bukowski. Wally, stand up. This is Wally Bukowski. This is the folks of the Canadian Armed Forces in Canada and Halifax.
Look at that.
Compete for this every year.
Oh.
So people who serve our country every year, every day, bravely, have this Mini Grey Cup, and they compete for it in Halifax. Wanted to make sure you saw it. It gives you a bit of a sample size of some of the passion behind football here in this city. Isn't that beautiful?
The Canadian Forces team of Toronto Hurricanes, they won the Grey Cup in 1942. They were an Air Force team, an RCAF team. This jersey is kind of like a replica of their jersey with the 18 on the back. Hoping we get our franchise in Halifax for the 18. So this is for the commissioner. I'm hoping he'll put it on.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah, there we go. Hold on. Okay, hold on.
Now, we should also point out that Wally's a little shy in front of big crowds. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just, you want the chair, buddy? You good?
No,
okay, right, okay.
This is great. The Canadian Force is a big supporter of football. They play this game every year in Halifax. It's actually a Navy tradition. Some of the Air Force guys do play. It's a chance for the non-commissioned members to get a crack at the officers. So it's
Nice.
There it is. Check out Halifax.
I told you this could
Do I
go.
have to give him the jersey back?
That's yours. See, you come to town, you get a free shirt.
Get a free shirt?
They, I told you backstage.
Listen, I really-
This could go several directions. There you go.
Okay.
So.
So does the jersey come with lobster or without? Is it?
Very good question.
Yeah.
I'll supply the lobster, yeah. I got a friend who sells them off the back of a truck. How's that? There you go. There you go. All right, we're good. Okay.
I like that too.
All right, so thank you, Wally. That was fun, and that's awesome to see. I wanted to grab a slice of that passion, and the jersey looks very good on you. So, sir, I have several questions here provided from CFL fans. The first question is this: what kind of a plan does the CFL have for providing better marketing of the league itself outside of non-CFL market cities, like this one? If this person says, if I go into a store anywhere in the Maritimes and ask for CFL merchandise, sometimes the reply is, what is the CFL? Meaning some parts of the Maritimes are disconnected from the league, and that impacts this person's ability to get merchandise. That from Stan and Sylvia Lane. To that you would say what?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with days like today. I think we have to be sure to treat the Atlantic region, we have to treat you as part of the family. We have to be here. I mean, such a big part of everything in life is building relationships. It's just much easier to build a relationship when you're actually in the room. It's easier to build it when you have interaction with one another. It's much better, I feel, it's a much better way to make decisions when you ask people for their input than making them unilaterally and excluding them from the process. I think all of these things together are an important part of building a relationship with the region that's going to help to make sure that that things like merchandise and other things are accessible. There are other things that we're talking about. So we've been working at a high level on a concept around, like a CFL membership, for lack of a better description. That fans can belong to a CFL club that has all kinds of potential benefits for them, including access to tickets in stadiums and potential travel packages so that fans could go and visit our stadiums, potentially have hospitality in those stadiums for the visitors that are coming to games from other parts of Canada. We have an opportunity in the CFL to make our league the most inclusive league in the world, to make sure that every Canadian and every football fan feels like they're part of what we're building. And we're just at the very early stages of looking at how we can do that. Part of it is building, I believe, a marketing plan isn't just our ideas, but they're yours as well. And that's why we're here. And I'm hoping today you'll share some of those ideas with us. Talk to us about what we can do to help you feel more included in this great game that belongs to Canada. The Canadian Football League belongs to Canada, belongs to Canadians, and belongs to all of you.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. This next question, as a backdrop to this question, I'll add this fact that in 1987, when I was at St. Pat's High School, I watched the Montreal Alouettes hold their training camp on the Halifax Commons and at St. Mary's University. It was really cool, and there was a lot of excitement in the city for their arrival. Out of that statement comes this: as a way to foster fan interest in the league in the Atlantic provinces prior to establishing a team here in Halifax, would it be possible to have one of the current CFL teams hold their extended training camp in Halifax? That from Chris Bousquet from Dartmouth. So basically, could you see a team come here for an extended training camp to drum up interest, plant the seeds even further?
Yeah, so I'd say obviously for this year, probably not, because training camp plans would already be well in place for all the teams. And those plans, the planning for training camps happen, a year in advance, and in some cases even further out when there are long-term agreements reached for facilities that we use. But I think that's a great example of something that we could do to make sure that we have a greater presence for the Canadian Football League here in this region. I love the idea, and it's one that I'm going to plan on taking back to our teams and our governors, and we should have a serious conversation about how we might do that in seasons to come.
And by the way, when the Alouettes came here in '87, they folded that year. But this time, if a team comes back, we'll rise them up a lot.
We will.
It's like, I left that out, but I mean, Alouettes came back bigger, stronger than ever.
But that's an important point. I was asked that question earlier this morning at a small session I attended here, and the question was, what's the state of the CFL? And I think if you don't mind, I'll just take a couple of minutes and share some thoughts with you. So last year, our attendance in our stadiums was up 2%. Which is okay. Our in-season ratings for TV were down 6%, but our playoff ratings were up 12%. So I think, last year was a pretty good year for the CFL, but we can do better than that. So we are launching and have been in the midst of a launch of what we're calling a bums in seat strategy. And bums in seats has all kinds of ways of interpreting that, and I'm sorry, I should have maybe thought about how I named that particular strategy, but it's about bringing fans into our stadiums. It's about making fans feel welcome. It's about creating a fan experience in our stadiums that cause fans not just to come once, but to come back time after time. So, the CFL office, the league office, has never participated in ticket selling across our teams. We've gone out and spent some time with many of the other major leagues, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL. I even had a conversation with the PGA Tour, and what we learned from that is that the league has a role to play in ticket selling. Some of it is just harvesting best practices. What are some teams doing better than other teams? But if you watch the World Juniors this year at all, and I'm a big fan of that tournament and our great Canadian players who play in that tournament, a lot of those games were played in what looked to be an empty arena. And it changes your viewing experience. When you turn it on, no matter how good the hockey is, on the ice in that moment, it doesn't feel good to watch the game when there's so many empty seats. And we need to make sure that our stadiums are full. We need to do everything we can to create that atmosphere, because the players will often say, we've got some great CFL players in the room today, and they'll sometimes say, well, I don't pay attention to the crowd, I don't hear the crowd. Nonsense. Come on, when you run onto that field and there is a huge crowd and they're going crazy and you can feel their energy, It not only makes a difference in the stadium, but it makes a difference when you're watching at home. You can feel that fan energy. So we're doing a big initiative on driving ticket sales as one of the things that we're going to do, but that strategy includes how do we welcome new people in. So we're going to do a kids family theme week this year where every one of our teams will host a family kids day. It's about creating that environment that give kids, in some cases, their very first time at a CFL game where they can come and fall in love with the game the way so many of us did. It's the way I fell in love with the game as a kid growing up in Winnipeg. My first game, sitting in the stadium, having a hot dog, just absolutely fell in love. We want to create that experience. So we're going to do a family kids day. We're also going to do a diversity is strength program this year. And why? Because Canada is changing, and we need to make sure that first generation families feel just as welcome in our stadiums and part of our game. There's some fantastic research that's been done on what the barriers are to fandom. And one of them is if you don't know the rules. So it's hard to be a fan of a game if you don't understand the game. So we have to find a way to reach into this generation, this generation of new Canadians, and help them to understand our great game, make them feel welcome in the stadium. So we're going to do a diversity is strength game this season in all of our stadiums to make sure that the inclusion and diversity that has been part of what's made the CFL so great in the locker rooms over the course of our league's history, going to Bernie Custis and Chuck Ely, who couldn't get jobs in football, who came here and were stars, and Chuck Ely, came and stayed and built a life and a phenomenal success story, as so many players have. We want to make sure that our stadiums are represent that same quality, that everyone is welcome. There's always room in our stadiums and in the CFL tent for all Canadians to participate. So those are just a couple of examples of things we're doing to drive attendance in the stadium, which we think will have a great effect on our TV viewership as well. So I think we are at the beginning of a new beginning. It's kind of like 105 years, we're a warm-up for what's going to come from here. And boy, what better way to accelerate the growth and success of the league than to think about what it could look like if you had a 10th franchise.
And by the way, sir, I wanted to touch on this. You mentioned some CFL players in the audience. Counting the commissioner, we have 5 current and former CFLers here today. I'll get these guys to stand, if not already standing. Chad Rempel, Jake Thomas, both are current CFLers. Dan McCullough and Justin Pillardi, ex-CFLers. Stand up, guys. They're here somewhere. And of course, Commissioner Ambrosie as well. So 5 former and current CFL football players in this crowd. You mentioned a moment ago the players. I want to take a moment to acknowledge them. Keeping on with the questions from the audience, from people who couldn't be here. This is from Heidi. Heidi plays for the only, this speaks to your diversity and inclusiveness angle a moment ago. Heidi plays for the only women's tackle football team in Nova Scotia in the Maritime Women's Football League. She says, with all the attention the CFL is bringing to Nova Scotia, what support could women's football expect from the league? Great question with regards to the development of more teams that play her brand of football in this area. She wants her product to grow. She sees your product helping her.
Yeah, and I think that we have to build and foster a development strategy for football that includes all parts of the country. It includes men, women, boys, and girls. It includes flag and tackle football. What was interesting about, I think a couple of weeks ago, the Toronto Raptors, in a really fantastic initiative, announced a 5-year, $5 million program to support the development of amateur basketball in Canada. And I heard that. I thought it was fantastic, and I applaud the Raptors for that. But I asked our chief financial officer to do an aggregate of all of the funding that the CFL and our teams do across the country. We provide about $3 million a year in funding to amateur football in Canada. So, but in a fantastically humble way, we never talk about it. You know, we kind of like Canada, just like Canadians, we kind of go about our business, doing the right thing, being humble, saying please, saying thank you, holding a door. Those things are things that have come natural to us, but in this case, to answer the question more specifically, we have not had a strategy, a specific strategy for the development of the game. And I think that's been a piece that's missing. It's something that we have to now look at. I actually was in London, England, talking to one of the big global search firms, executive search firms, and I said, what are the big trends in sport? And he replied that the leagues are all thinking about the development of their game. How do they attract more people into the game? How do they make the game? How do they grow at the grassroots level the game? So we haven't had this in place. I think this is definitely something to work on. We have great amateur football. I think we have to talk to the women who are playing football, try to understand how we might lean in and help them. We put on a big flag football initiative last year with our friends from the NFL. It was a huge success, culminated with a tournament played at the Grey Cup. And then the kids that won that tournament at the Grey Cup were a team from Saskatchewan, the Junior Rough Riders, and they went on to play at the Pro Bowl in an international tournament. Now, I'm going to tell you this story because it is a perfect example of why Canada is the most amazing place and why our kids represent a really cool and bright future. So these kids from Saskatchewan are playing one of the teams. There were two teams from China. And the kids from Saskatchewan were literally twice as big as every kid from the team from China. And it was kind of funny because the Canadian kids, boys and girls, ran out into the field, and then the Chinese team ran out, and I thought, oh my goodness, like we are literally, there's like two completely different worlds. So then the Chinese team's got the ball first, and they throw an interception. The team from Saskatchewan runs it in, touchdown, pick six, it's 7-0. Then we go on offense, we throw two passes in the end zone, now it's 14-0. Chinese team comes back on the field, throws a pick six, 21-0. And in a perfectly beautiful way, what happened after that was fascinating because the Canadian kids, they knew they were winning. They started celebrating every little victory that the Chinese had. The Chinese team didn't fumble. The kids were high-fiving them. The kids would, have a completed pass. The kids from Canada were high-fiving them and celebrating. It was the most amazing thing to watch, and it's another reason why developing our game is so important, because the kids, they become better. They become better citizens. They do amazing things when you put them on a field in a team environment, and it's just another part of our amateur development strategy, flag football, to make sure that we get as many kids playing the game as we can. And you have got a big flag football program here in the Maritimes that we need to continue to work on and develop with you.
This question from Shannon, former Rough Riders season ticket holder for 17 years, took a day off today to be with us here today, and she asked the following. She says, I have noticed how much ticket prices and concession prices have risen in the past few years. To attract new fans to support a new team here and knowing about our economy here in the Maritimes, how are you prepared to make games affordable and accessible? Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. And, it's probably premature to start talking about specific strategies.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sir. But what I can say is this. One of the things that I am so proud of the CFL is I think we are still the affordable professional league. Families can still come and be fans of our game. And I pay attention to our ticket prices in all of our 9 cities. I pay attention to it because I think one of the things that makes us special and different is we are everybody's league. Every Canadian can be a fan of the CFL, and that's not true for a lot of other sports. A lot of other sports are now literally priced out of the market for many Canadians, and we want to make sure that we don't fall into that same trap. So I would say when it get closer to that time when you cross over some hurdles, and we'll talk about those, I'm sure, in the next segment. But that I think that this ownership group will work hard with this community to make sure that there's a strategy in place, to make sure that there's a place in the stadium for all people from the Atlantic region, as I think our teams are trying hard to do that for all fans in our 9 other cities.
This question from Devin. Has the CFL learned anything about how the NHL has used the expansion draft to build a competitive team vis-a-vis the Vegas Golden Knights? I would maybe turn that question around saying, did Vegas learn anything from the CFL? Because with your Ottawa, the expansion experience in Ottawa for the past 3 or 4 years has been remarkable. But I guess, can you take something from the Vegas experience in the NHL, which is a resounding success, and maybe apply it to future expansion scenarios or a scenario?
Yeah, what we're embarking on as part of our thirst to take this league to this next level is we're looking at best practices in all sports, in all leagues. As I said, I had a conversation with the commissioner of the PGA Tour. I did that because there are things they're doing in golf that are quite innovative and fascinating. I think that we need to look at some of the things they're doing in other leagues that are really working, and they're helping them to develop a more competitive foundation. But I also would say, I never want to lose the passion and the pride that we have for how many great things we do in the CFL, and Ottawa being one of them. Ottawa is an overwhelming success. It has not only did they get off to a great start, but go to a game in that stadium, and I see some of our friends.
It's a wonderful environment. It's a wonderful environment.
It is such a cool vibe. They have really figured out, and the thing that it speaks again to inclusion. It speaks to strategy. What they've done is, so back in my day, and by a show of hands, how many of you grew up at a time when standing room only tickets meant you basically were the worst tickets in the house? How many of you? Okay, like a lot of you. That was kind of like, wow, you said to one of your friends, oh, I got standing room only. Like, you've got, now standing room only are some of the hottest tickets in our stadium.
It's a great way to watch a game.
It is a great way to watch the game. And you go to Ottawa and you go into, they call it the biggest bar rail in Canada. You go into that end zone, and I'm telling you, a lot of those people are not watching football. They're kind of at a nightclub, and then a football game broke out. Yeah. And it's fascinating to watch it. But theirs is no less fandom than mine, which would be traditional. Go to my seat, stop on the way, get a hot dog, go to your seat, sit, maybe a beer, watch 4 quarters of football, and enjoy it. So we have to create an environment for all fans. But I think leagues around the world could learn from what Ottawa did as just an example, and it's no less intense in Hamilton, and Winnipeg's got the Rum Hut. Boy, I'll tell you, you go to the Rum Hut, it's just like, wow, that is a seriously big bar, and people are having fun, and we're seeing that. So we've got a lot to teach other leagues, and there are definitely things that we can learn. Examples, as you pointed out with Las Vegas.
For sure. Those are all the questions I have. Before we pivot to bring 2 guests to the stage and talk a bit about CFL and Halifax, anybody want to go to one of the microphones? And Wally, you've had your moment, so you're good. You're cool. Anyone else want to go to the? Yeah, please just say your name and ask your question, please.
Sure, it's Kevin Mullen. In terms of weaving more into Canadian culture, I was thinking about the development of Canadian talent as being one of those core elements, and attracting top athletes into the programs. And one of the things here, like hockey 20 years ago, really improved the quality of the year-round training for hockey, involved the new science, and there was great development there. So football in Canada could use that. And I was wondering what types of improvements to the infrastructure available to interested athletes in this area would we see if there was a new CFL franchise in Halifax, in terms of filtered down benefits and access to quality training?
Yeah, it's Kevin, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you, and that's a great question. I think it ultimately is probably best answered through some examples. Like, we are seeing the development of such strong amateur football programs. You know, I think of Edmonton as an example, and the significant amount of funding that Edmonton has put in place for amateur football in their part of Canada. You see that in Saskatchewan with the Riders. We see that in Winnipeg with the Bombers. Yesterday I was in Hamilton. We see that. I think that the connection between having a pro team, having a strong and positive connection to the university programs, ultimately to amateur football, can all help us to create a more robust ecosystem for the training and development of our young athletes. So this is one of the things that we have not done in a formal way especially well, and I think there is room for us to improve significantly on all of that, on making all of those connections. But I will tell you without a doubt, having a professional team in this region would have an incredibly positive effect on the development of future stars for Canadian football.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And if I can pick up on that just for a moment, 24 years ago, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League came to Halifax. It had a demonstrated impact on Junior A and Junior B hockey in this market. Are you saying the CFL would help the St. Mary's Huskies of the world and those development programs, because it would be, as we say, a rising tide carries all ships, and it would enhance the whole environment for all those development level teams?
Yeah, I think so, because just the exposure of these athletes, these players that are in the room with us today are world-class athletes. And first of all, I can honestly tell you, I think that sometimes in a perfectly quintessentially Canadian way, we're so humble that we don't do enough to celebrate how amazing these athletes are. What I love about our players is how great they are on the field, but pound for pound, there is no league in the world, like literally no league in the world, where the players are as good on the field and great off the field in their communities as the players of the Canadian Football League. And I think that having players here living and working in the community, playing in the community, connecting with the community, allows young people, the same way it was for me. You aspire to be like somebody who's that great player. I think just on that alone, just the value of making that emotional connection to a star who you see doing all the right things, playing hard, working hard, training hard, and being a good citizen in the community. I think all of those things will help to raise the level of talent in football.
This side of the room? Oh, there you go.
Hi, Randy. Matthew, Argos season ticket holder. Question for you. I know TSN I recognize that TSN's been a really great partner for the league in the last little while, but the trend right now is cable cutting. Are we talking with TSN about offering a streaming service where if I don't want to get the full cable package, but I want to buy the season from TSN, or some other means where I can just buy the season? Because that's pretty much, I know a lot of people around the tailgate at the Argos, that's the only reason sometimes they have a cable package is to get the games. So are we looking at a streaming service just to get the season, the full season? Yeah,
it's one of the benefits of having a partner as great as TSN, and obviously their connection to the Bell group of companies, Bell Media. We are talking to them about everything now. We're in a conversation with them. I can't say enough about how strong a commitment Bell has made to the CFL. Look, George Cope and Larry Tannenbaum buying the Argonauts and getting them into the position they were last year, and it was so great to be on the field with those two men when we were awarding the Grey Cup in Ottawa last year. Now they've moved that investment into Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. But I think it's an illustration of how committed Bell is, George Cope and Bell are to our league. That's the way we address our relationship with them, is how do we, I know they want us to be successful and grow. So that's part of the conversation right now, is how do we think about evolving the way we bring our game out to our fans in ways that are consistent with what fans want, because they're not all watching our games on TV and on cable the way they used to. And so it is part of an ongoing conversation. We don't have all the answers yet, but it's something we're definitely working on.
But you should also consider getting the biggest cable package with all 5 TSNs on it. You know what I'm saying?
As long as TSN gets the money, I want TSN to get the money.
This bad boy is being broadcast to Toronto live, so we want TSN 5.
Everybody back home.
All right. We have a question to this side of the room. There you go. Sorry for the wait.
My name is Belle Byrne. I am a former Argos season ticket holder. And married to a Saskatchewan Roughrider fan.
You say that like you have a relative in prison or something. I mean, that is.
Sometimes it feels like it, especially if they don't win and they have 13 men on the field.
Yeah. You're fantastic. Yeah. We'll give you 5 questions. Take the floor. Go ahead.
I do have a sort of 2-pronged question. One of them is when I was a little girl, I loved football. I would watch it on the weekend. I would go to games with my family. I wanted to play football. Unfortunately, women were not allowed to play football at that time, and I wanted to be involved, so I trained with our football team in high school. I did stats for them the entire time I was in football, or in high school. I went on to university, did the statistician position for my university. What I'm looking at from the CFL is I want to see female faces looking back at me on game day. Not necessarily players, but I want to see the coaching staff. I want to see management staff. I want to see CFL commissioners that wear a female face looking back at me. I want to see sportscasters with female faces looking back at me, because I love the game. Why can't other women love the game as much to be able to talk about it? And that, is there any way that we can look forward to that with this CFL for the community?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate that. So I can say without hesitation that one of the most important demographics for the future of our game is making a stronger connection with women, and not in a passive way. I've got 3 daughters, all of whom love football and love watching football. I just this past December promoted Christina Litz, who was our head of marketing. Christina is now the Chief Strategy Officer for the Canadian Football League. And because Christina has got a brilliant mind, has a great love of the game, and understands the game in some ways differently than I do. It makes for a great partner. As for having a commissioner with a female face, if you just don't mind, I'd like to keep the job for a little longer. So on that one, I'm going to ask if you could just hold off a tiny bit. But Christina and I, along with Jim Pop, went down to a session at the Pro Bowl called Women in Football. And we were part of a panel discussion on how to encourage the development of more participation in the game, both in all aspects of the game. So some of the women who applied to be participants in this conference were very focused on coaching, scouting, football operations. Some of them were more focused on the administrative aspects of football, and we had a chance to spend time talking to them. We are working hard. We've got an amazing group of women working at the Canadian Football League. Several of them were promoted as part of a reorganization strategy. I think there is more room in our game for football for women as we go forward. Brody Lawson, who many of you might know, is one of the leads on our CFL Week. That program, which we built from the ground up, that program now had more than 1 million viewers last year. We're going to continue to work on that. We're working with TSN on a strategy for how we can tie a little bit of that CFL Week feeling into some of our game day programming. So it is a work in progress for sure, and one that I want to work hard at making sure that women have a very strong seat at the table in all aspects of the game, that at a minimum in every moment we need to be thinking about how do we make more room for great women to be part of the Canadian Football League and amateur and football in Canada in general.
Right. So my second question was, because I do love watching football and can't always go to the game because they're mostly at West. They don't have a team here for me to go in person to have my butt in the seat. So the problem I have is a lot of the broadcast times. I have to stay up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to watch a game to completion if it's being played out West. Is there any chance that we can start looking at different types of game times so that East Coasters can actually not lose sleep being able to watch the game? I don't know how many times that we have recorded the game with anticipation of watching it, and then we find out what the score was, and then we don't bother watching it.
Right. So that's a great question. Can I ask you, but then turn it around perhaps to all of you? One of the things that fans have been giving me feedback on as I've done this tour is they've been asking about the time of the Grey Cup game itself, and one gentleman in Edmonton made the point that he's got a young family, and when the game has a evening kickoff time, sometimes his kids can't actually watch the end of the Grey Cup. Just by a show of hands, how many of you would like to see us have an earlier kickoff on Grey Cup Sunday to start the games earlier? Anyone against it? Anyone doesn't like the idea of an earlier kickoff time? Okay, so just okay. You'll need protection on your way out, by the way. So okay, so another question, another thing that was pointed out actually came up in Hamilton last night. And it was a point made by a fan and received unanimous support and I'm not suggesting we do this, but this was an interesting question, was what about moving Grey Cup to Saturday? And so just by a way of show of hands, how many of you would like a Grey Cup Saturday rather than a Grey Cup Sunday? Okay, and how many of you are against it? Okay, so we got to introduce you to the fans in Hamilton and have you work it out because they... Anyway, thank you for that.
Question,
Yeah, right.
Question to the left, Blue Bombers jersey.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner. My name's Stan Lane. Welcome to Halifax, the home of the Grey Cup in 2022. I can always dream. My question is about the largest market we have in the CFL, Toronto. What does the league have in plans, or the Toronto organization as well, in addressing the empty seats that we see every game? It's awful embarrassing to actually watch a game, and my brother Matt was at one of the games last year, and he could have sat anywhere, and he said, I can't believe that the seats are so empty. Is it because of the high cost of living in Toronto or the high cost of going to the game? Just wondering.
Yeah, no, one of the big benefits of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, taking ownership of the team, is accessing their vast capabilities for marketing and fan development. I mean, we've seen what they've done with the Raptors, from the Raptors' rather humble beginnings, and now the Raptors as a franchise and a property, and frankly on the court is a world-class success. Look, I think that so many of the things that we've talked about apply to Toronto. So our strategy for putting more fans in the stands absolutely applies to Toronto. I think in part we've got to capture that millennial generation who come to the games much as the way we're seeing them come to games in Ottawa and in Hamilton and Winnipeg and all of our other centers. We have to create that invitation in. Part of it's how we take the game to them. The question that I think was Kevin asked about about TSN and digital or streaming. Maybe it wasn't Kevin, one of you asked about that. That's the way they're consuming. We've got to make sure that we're bringing the game to them that way. But we have to take the game to them as well. So one of the things we're talking about for our Thursday night property this year, Thursday nights are the best ratings night for TSN. So that, in our conversation about scheduling this year, we put a big emphasis on making sure that every team had a Thursday night game. What we're talking about is potentially putting in these hot zones in the stadiums a little broadcast desk, you know, where these fans are having fun, and from time to time during the broadcast going into those zones and broadcasting from those zones to create a sense of what that experience is like and how much fun fans are having in that area. So it's an example of how we should target market to a particular segment of the market. The reason why we're going to do a diversity is strength week is to make sure that all Canadians feel welcome. Toronto is a very diverse city. We need to unlock the potential of all of those communities who haven't come to a game before, and if we get them to come to one game, we might get them to come to many. It's another example. The reason we're going to do a kids family program is to make sure that we start encouraging kids in. Our CFL Frenzy game, which was specifically designed around, it's roughly that kind of 8 to 12-year-old market. That game now has more than 500,000 downloads in the App Store. We have had several days where we have been the #1 download in the App Store in the games section. We download about 2,000 to 3,000 of that CFL Frenzy game per day. And we're looking at how we grow that. These are all parts of the strategies that we're putting into place to capture different market segments, and they absolutely apply to Toronto, but they are strategies that are being employed in all of our CFL cities as well.
Thank you.
We have, looks like 3 more questions before we invite our next 2 guests up to the podium. Sir, go ahead. By the way, great shirt.
Of course it is.
Nice.
You know, I went through the Rough Riders, Renegades, Red Blacks. You never change. I'm a CFL fan like everybody is in this room, or we wouldn't be here. I had to write this down so I'd get it right. I hate to be pessimistic, but this isn't the first time that we've tried to get a franchise. What makes this effort different than the other ones? Because we still don't have a stadium, and without one, a franchise is just wishful thinking. And if we did have a place to play, realistically, when could we expect to get a franchise?
You know, wishful thinking is a good thing.
Wishful. Well,
This could be a question for the second portion. We can do this now.
You know, maybe I'll just, like, very briefly, I feel like this has been, and all of you know, this has been part of the conversation for a very long time, is, you know, when do we get a team in Atlantic Canada? I feel like it is different this time. I really do. I just have a feeling that there is a momentum here. I think the CFL is in a different place. Again, I was saying this earlier, when have you seen the kind of quality of ownership that we have across our league today in the current 9 cities? We have a much more stable, strong foundation of owners for which a new group, and this group in particular, would be welcomed. I just think that the stars seem to have aligned well for us to take a crack at getting this in, and I don't think we have a completed CFL until we have this franchise in place. It's like the National Railroad. You just aren't done until you're done.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Gary Fontaine.
Gary? Okay, we're going to revisit that as well when we get our 2 next guests up as well. Thank you for your question.
No problem.
Okay, next in line. Hello.
Hi there. So I used to work for the Ottawa Renegades back in the early days. I'm a proud Maritimer. I'm a huge supporter of the CFL. Come Grey Cup, I always have a huge party. That being said, I know you're not going to commit to a team, obviously without a stadium, et cetera, et cetera. But for the fans here and the yet-to-be fans, I'm wondering if you could commit as commissioner, while you're commissioner, to at least preseason games back in Moncton, maybe potentially here at Husky Stadium that holds 11,000. It at least would allow a lot of our grassroots football teams and programs to get on board, potentially leading up, even if it's a 5-year program till we get a team here. That would allow planning and city development and at least the community to get on board. So if not Moncton, if not Halifax, maybe somewhere else, Fredericton, I don't know. But at least could you maybe guarantee some preseason games?
Go ahead, guaranteed.
Well, no, see, I don't know if you noticed, but it was the part of her question which was the while you're commissioner part. And when I connect that to the previous question about a female face on the commission, is there a thing happening here? Like, have you been
we
talking,
know what you're doing.
have you been talking to the governors? Is there a conversation?
Maybe.
You know what, I do really like that idea, and again, part of the reason that I wanted to come on the road and spend time with our fans is to be able to collect a bunch of good ideas and take them back to my partners and share ideas, to say, you know, here's what I'm hearing from our actual fans who are passionate about our league, and that is just another great idea that I think we should put on the table and talk about. Obviously, we can't do that this preseason because that's locked in, but
Next season.
But for next, I think it's a great idea, and one. So what I can guarantee you is that I guarantee you that I will take that great idea back to the CFL governors.
Thank you.
Next question, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Evan. Just want to thank you for coming to Halifax in the first place. And second, I don't have any questions, but I have a couple of quick comments. First of all, just I was thinking when the lady asked about getting more women on the TV and visible to the viewers, and I really like the one thing that TSN has done. You know, when where they had the 5 channels, they have the ability to. They have like 2 separate sports centers going on with. They got Jay and Dan you can watch, or you can watch like it's Natasha and Kate. So that's cool. And then if you could, especially when the guy was talking about the different outlets of viewership, if you had streaming and TSN and multiple options, you can have women here, men here, and commentating and all those different things. So it's good avenues out there that we can use already. And also I read about Christina, the woman that
Christina
organizes.
Litz,
Yeah, in the paper last year, and that's really cool. Organizing the Grey Cups and all that. That was cool to see. And just one last thing, I really hope that we can get a team, because I've been a big fan of the NFL for a lot of my life, and it was just because I don't feel that much of the connection to the CFL. I tried to watch it now and then, but it's just that when I grew up in Newfoundland, and now I'm a little further west. But when you're stuck out here in the east, and I just don't feel that connection to the CFL. But if we had a team here, then you can actually, it's easy to get to, go out to, and support. And I'd go to the games and start buying some merchandise and watch more. I watched the Great Cup.
So by a show of hands, who wants to see the big fella here take to TSN the idea of dueling broadcasts?
Love that.
So I mean, look, are you?
So if I'm on one TSN and Kate and Natasha are on the other, I lose every time. Just so you know. I know how that's going to play
You
out,
may
yeah.
not be, in fact, our best advocate for this plan.
Probably not. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Good ideas, though. I mean,
That's a very interesting idea.
for sure. Next up,
Hi,
diversity is strength, says the T-shirt.
Yeah, my dad got it for me. I'm wondering, with what the CFL can do to engage the large university population in Halifax, especially for students like myself who hail from places like Saskatchewan where football is a religion?
Right.
You go to school here in the city?
Yeah,
What university?
Dal.
And you're from Saskatchewan?
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, you know what? In fact, my youngest daughter, Emily, is a student at Western, and she was asking me the same question just yesterday, although she wasn't really asking as much as she was telling, so thank you for being... I have 3 daughters and my wife and a female dog, and there's a lot more telling in my house than there is asking. But seriously, she said the same thing. She said, Dad, how do we get that stronger connection to the universities? How in part, here the answer would be, of course, if we had a franchise, how do we get that franchise to connect itself to this student base? And I think, again, if you just, not to suggest it's only Ottawa, but one of the things that's making Ottawa special is the vibe that you're getting around that fan base, that in many ways, a lot of the fan base are your demographic, and they're coming out and they're creating a different style of fandom, but a passionate one. And coming from Saskatchewan, you understand passionate fandom for sure. And I think these are just some of the things that, again, in this new era we are working to create for our league, where we are working hard on these strategies to make sure that no fan base is left behind. And the fan base that you're describing, the university one, is one that I think we have to spend a lot of time digging in on and making sure that you know you are warm and welcomed in our great league. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let us pivot to the talk about theme around Halifax. You may have heard there's a bit of buzz in this city about CFL in Halifax. So apparently you were coming to town to announce a franchise and a stadium.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently you were, but no. So that's called getting ahead of things. But let us wrap our arms around the enthusiasm, because there's a lot of excitement about the city and connecting this city to this league going forward. So with that in mind, we have 2 special guests. I'll introduce them to come to the stage one at a time. First of all, founding partner from Maritime Football Ltd, Bruce Bowser. Please welcome him to the stage. Also, a big Maritime warm welcome for founding partner for the Maritime Football League, Anthony LeBlanc.
And I'll just take
So you guys may have noticed you're among 350 friends, and you're instantly very popular in the city. A lot of excitement, and Gary asked a question from this. Where's Gary? Put your hand up, Gary. There's Gary back there in the Ottawa shirt. Your theme was one of skepticism, correct?
Yes.
Not that you're being negative, but...
I was involved in a group that was here about 10, 12 years ago, Atlantic Professional Football Ventures. I know because I ran the group. Now, I got 800 people, roughly, give or take, who were really interested. But nobody was interested, the city wasn't interested in the stadium. You couldn't raise money for a stadium. And without a stadium, it's a pipe dream. I mean, I love going to Ottawa to the games, but there'd be nothing more exciting than being at a game in Halifax. I've always been an Ottawa fan since I was this big. But this would give me a reason to change.
So,
When they lost the team, then I was sort of a Toronto fan, but.
so what he's saying, and I'm just to propel it into a question for our 2 guests, he wants it to come. He's been burned before, so his level of skepticism, but he wants to wrap his arms around a team in the near future. To him, when it comes to his enthusiasm and the skepticism he has, I'll start with you. You say what?
So this is not the first time we've been asked this question. Why now? I think the why now part is this region has deserved a team, a stadium, a development like this. I mean, the commissioner talks about, Canada being a humble place. I think as a maritime, and we take that to a whole different level. I mean, if you look what's going on downtown Halifax, just in this whole region in terms of the growth over the last several years, I think the time is right. I think we deserve a world-class stadium here. We're the only region in the country that does not have a stadium that's capable of hosting games, capable of having large concerts, and capable of being home to a CFL team. So I think the time is right. We've got tremendous momentum. I've got 275 of the 350 people here I went to school with. I grew up in this area. I started my family here, started raising my family here. I started my career here. We're due and ready for our team, and we've got great momentum. So thank you so much for everybody to come out and support this today.
Did you want to pick up on that as well? I mean, there seems to be a slow and steady wins the race theme to this, but at the same time, enthusiasm is a hard thing to contain, especially in this community.
Yeah, so hopefully it's noted that we weren't out in public before it was appropriate. As a matter of fact, when your colleague Dave Naylor broke the story, yes, we weren't quite ready to go public at that point, but... Sorry for that. Well, it's news people, you folk have to do your job. But we had been working at that point for 4 or 5 months, several discussions here in Halifax with the regional municipality, with the province, with local stakeholders. So I think that, if I could speak humbly, I think we've gone about this in a very thoughtful approach. We had already had an opportunity to meet with Randy and his group a number of times. So a lot of work had been done in the background. Now, it's not to sit here and say that, we've done everything that needs to be done, but there does seem to be, for lack of a better term, a will to get this done this time at all the levels that need to get it done. It's no secret that we're having in-depth discussions at HRM, in-depth discussions with the province, obviously ongoing discussions. When the news came out last week that Randy was coming here to announce a few things, I called Bruce and I was like, thank God we're finally going to announce something. I guess I believed it as well. But I say that in jest, but I think we're being very thoughtful, but I don't think, to your point about the momentum and in keeping everybody, like this is phenomenal. This is beyond our expectations. But we want to make sure that it isn't a case of, 3 months from now we're sitting here going, well, yeah, at some point we'll come back with something to say. My hope and expectation is sometime in that period of time, the next couple of months, we will have something substantive to talk to you about.
Have you done, I imagine you have, but can you shed some light on any market studies when it comes to the ability to draw 20 to 25,000 fans per game, or the ability to sell certain number of luxury boxes to a certain number of companies to generate design revenues? Are you getting a glimpse or look under the hood that there's maybe more enthusiasm there than you thought there would have been, or is there work to be done? Can you tell us how that part's going?
Well, I think, first off, Bruce and myself and our other primary founding partner, Gary Drummond, we're all seasoned business people who don't get into a business just because we think it would be a great idea and it would be a lot of fun. So we've hired local polling organizations. We're working with local government relations firms. My humble view is actually the desire is stronger than we anticipated, which we thought out of the gate was going to be pretty strong.
This would be a good example.
Yeah, this is the sample size.
The sort of support that we've received. And I think a lot of people point to Saskatchewan as being a similar demographic. I mean, Saskatchewan didn't have a professional team until they put a football team there. And the Maritimes is very much like the Saskatchewan region. The market research we've done shows that this region would support a football team. But one of the things that we talk a lot about, it's not just about doing a team. It's about building a development like we've done at Lansdowne, where it's a stadium that can host events that we should be doing in the Maritime region. It's about building development around that, and there's been a lot of talk about sites, and we haven't chosen a site. No. I mean, we're looking at sites, but I think that we're ready. The city, if you look at the downtown core of Halifax and just the whole region, we've grown up to the point where we deserve a stadium, a world-class stadium, and a development like we see in other cities.
Commissioner, one of the questions from the audience, he referenced, I think, the 2022 Grey Cup. That puts a timeline.
2021 is when we're planning for the Grey
Okay,
Cup.
fantastic. I think it's great. But timelines can be tricky because you're also managing expectations. Is it the league's attitude that when it's ready, we'll get it done, or do you, in your mind's eye, have a target date where you would like to be seeing touchdowns scored in Halifax by year X?
Yeah, the conversation we've had with Anthony and Bruce and Gary has been very specifically free of putting artificial timetables that will put pressure, unnecessary pressure on this. There's enough pressure. I mean, being in the room with all of you and the enthusiasm creates its own volume of pressure. We are going to be purposeful. That is the most important thing, is that we are walking together every step along the way towards all the things that would need to be done, so when we reach milestone moments, that we can act quickly to advance to the most important task in the process. So what we've committed to, Anthony and Bruce, is that we are going to walk in lockstep. The league won't get behind, but nor will we get ahead. But I can say this: look, we would want to see, if this is going to happen, we'd all want to see the first kickoff in the first game. I'd like to be the first in line to buy the first lobster roll in the stadium as quickly as we possibly can.
They're not cheap, by the way.
No, they're not cheap, but boy, they're good. So, but seriously, we're not going to miss a step.
No.
We're going to be thorough and thoughtful, because it's to use the carpenter's axiom: you measure twice and cut once. We want to move well, but this isn't about getting a team here. It's about getting it here right and doing it in the right way to have a franchise that will benefit this region for decades to come.
And let me ask this question. Either one of you can pick up on it. I've had people say to me, because of the environment I live in professionally, they talk about crowd sizes, stadium sizes, commercial real estate, population growth. Those are all key indicators. For me, having lived here all of my 48 years, this is an event town. When you bring an event here, whether it's the Final Eight, the Tattoo, the World Junior Hockey Championship, you name it, we could do it all day long. We just don't succeed. We hit the ball out of the park. Is that the model for the CFL in the city, say 9 or 10 events? Do you look at it as a week-by-week basis, event by event? Could that be part of the key to the lock for a CFL franchise here?
Well, I think it's multiple aspects to that. But yeah, first off, I mean, I know there's a number of Ottawa Red Black fans in the room, and I'm glad to be a fellow season ticket member of the Ottawa Red Blacks. You go to those games, as the commissioner was saying, and it is an event. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's more than just a football game. And each one of those is an exciting opportunity to go to for everybody. My 5-year-old daughter loves it just as much as I do, but of course she loves it more for just touchdowns and then big explosions. But it's an exciting event. But you lead up to an important point that Bruce and I have talked about a lot. He's mentioned the fact that this will be more than just a stadium. But within the stadium, that stadium will be more than just a football team. This will be about multiple events. It will be about a number of concerts, big and smaller, amphitheater-style concerts. It's about collegiate athletics. We have representatives, players from a number of the universities. Bruce is a member of the SMU board. We were talking with the guys from Dow this morning. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more than just the 9 events, but those 9 events are the key to getting the stadium to fruition.
So what's next? Take us through. Give me your without being too forensic and giving away secrets you can't give away, but can you give us an idea of your list when it comes to this franchise coming to this market? Your to-do list going forward is what?
So I've said it on a number of occasions. Patience as a businessman is not my strong suit. So if I had my way, we'd be playing this season. But the reality is, there's so many moving parts. So we have the CFL that we've been in discussions with. And Randy, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. Making this your 10th stop. We have great support and backing from the CFL and have ongoing discussions. We've been talking to developers because this has to be, a stadium that involves the whole region. We've had lots of discussions with all 3 levels of government. We've had discussions with stakeholders. So we have all these moving pieces that you need to line up, and we haven't had many roadblocks. Yeah. We've got a great ownership group that's well funded, that doesn't just include myself and and Anthony up here on the stage. There's some great local business people and individuals in the region that are part of the ownership group. So, it's going to be a process that we hope within months we can sit here and make some announcements that are actually true announcements. But it's going to be a couple of years before we have a stadium built. And I think that's why it's so important to have a turnout like this, because we need the momentum to keep coming. I would encourage you to get on to our website, to follow us on Twitter, to keep the momentum going. And as we start to knock off some of these tasks, I do think we'll see the CFL coming down here and doing more to promote the game in the region.
Give us a glimpse of what you do going forward on this. Similar chart for you as well?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of things that have to happen in short order. Most specifically, it's no secret that we spend a lot of time talking with the league. In fact, I was in Toronto 2 days ago with Randy and some of his colleagues. So hopefully, I think that's kind of gating factor number one. But to Bruce's point, there hasn't been any roadblocks. We've just got a few things to finalize. And then, yeah, we have to figure out what the best site is and work closely with our public partners. But it is critical that we keep the momentum that we've seen and continue this process, move the ball down the field. And we seem to be doing the right things, but we've got a few more things to do. And I did want to point out, Bruce thanked Randy for coming. Another point, this was Randy's idea to come here. It's Hey, he had someone in his office reach out about a month ago and say, Randy's going off and doing Randy's Roadshow. It's going to be great. And he loves the logo because it makes him look like he has more hair. And, and I obviously need that as well. And said, he's going to go to all 9 CFL cities, but he thinks that maybe he should go to Halifax. What do you think? And I was just floored. I was like, yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea. So thank you again, Commissioner.
I asked this question. We'll open it up to any more questions from the audience in just a short moment, but how did you keep this a secret for so long? I will tell you a story. I was in Toronto in the TSN newsroom the day Dave Naylor broke this. I live in Halifax. I was sitting 15 feet from him, and we had this breaking news at 5:05 Eastern, and I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I haven't heard a thing about this. It exploded with enthusiasm, and there wasn't a leak in that boat the whole way going through. How long have you been doing this before Dave Naylor broke the story? And how did you keep it such a tightly kept secret? Because it was skillfully done, given the fact that typically you hear little drips and drabs, which didn't happen in this case.
Well, Bruce was the first one to get involved. That would have been probably about this time last year.
Yeah, so we started about a year ago with the former Commissioner Jeffrey Orridge, having some discussions that, that started with bringing together a group in the region to see if there would be enough support and interest in sort of perpetuating the concept, and there was and has been. And I don't think it was so much intentional about not wanting to leak it out. I think it was really about, we're working closely with the CFL, we're working closely with a number of the stakeholders here in the region, and we didn't want to embarrass anybody. We wanted to make sure that we had, at least our ducks in line, and how it remained as quiet as it did, I think speaks to,
we're
the
that
fact,
good.
We're that good.
But to that point, I think you should look skeptically on people who want to go out too soon.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not tooting our own horns, but also there's a reputational risk to doing things like that. But we wanted to see if there was a there, and candidly, we weren't ready, but we weren't totally opposed when Dave broke the story. But again, there was nothing we could do when Dave found out. But it's we're just trying to do this thoughtfully.
Do you have any questions from our microphones in the crowd? Anyone want to jump up and ask us a question? We have a question to the right of the room. Go ahead, sir. Atlantic. Whoa. Come here. Come on up here for just a second. All right. Come on. You, my friend, are wearing an amazing, come on, right here. Stand up right there. Turn around. Atlantic Schooners, folks, undefeated. Now, all right, you can go. You can ask your question. Of course, the backdrop is we were given a conditional franchise there 35 years ago. It didn't happen, and that was a big letdown, leading to some of the skepticism. Go ahead, sir. Your question with that awesome T-shirt is what?
My question very quickly is regards to federal funding for any prospective stadium. If you look at the models in Hamilton and Toronto, there was a generous proportion of federal funding, but that hinged on other events. In Hamilton, the Pan American Games, and the under-20 soccer tournament in Toronto. My question to both you, the ownership group, and the commissioner, couldn't you go to Parliament Hill and say, isn't a stadium alone for a CFL franchise alone good enough to be funding a stadium?
That gets into economic impact questions as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're working very closely with local stakeholders like Deloitte, who are putting together the appropriate economic impact analysis. We have great representation from government relations. But look, there isn't any one, while there's a number of examples of stadiums that have been built, and Randy could talk to those a lot better than I can, there isn't one specific model that makes the most sense here. What does make the most sense is ensuring that we have a model that everybody is comfortable with. And we're having ongoing discussions with, as Bruce said, all levels of government, and we'll continue to do those and arrive at a spot that makes sense for everybody.
I'm starting to feel like a politician where we're avoiding questions, and it's not so much about avoiding questions, it's about getting the right stakeholders together in a room to talk, and I can tell you that we've had all of the right stakeholders in the room at one time or another, and they continue to be in the room to have those discussions. And look, I publicly say that this region deserves a world-class stadium and a place where we can host world-class events, world-class concerts, and a CFL team.
And the foundation to his question is well placed. If the CFL here and a stadium here would generate economic activity, there's probably a business case to support that, correct?
Sure. Well, we invited Justin to join us today, but he's in India, I believe, or just coming back. I think it would receive government support from the federal level, like other regions have, and we have had discussions.
The thing we have heard more so from Mayor Savage and the Premier is there's an interest, but it has to be private sector led. And as Bruce said, this is going to be bigger than a stadium. The surrounding development would be private led. It would be, actually, I think you'd be fair to say it would be completely private. And any involvement at the public sector level will have to be led by the private sector. And we understand that, we appreciate it, and that's the model that we're moving forward with. Okay.
Question to the left of the room.
Well, to kind of roll into what you just said there, a lot of it's private sector. It's going to be privately funded, all that sort of stuff. That's not going to stop the enthusiasm of the province or of the city. And you guys are doing a ton of work behind the scenes, as we know, and I think we are all very appreciative for even just bringing this idea to Halifax again and getting the enthusiasm back up. But my question is, what can we do as a city, as a public, as a community to help you guys? And is it flood, piss off Stephen McNeil? Is it flood Mike Savage with emails, phone calls? What can we do as a city to help you guys and really, get this thing going?
March on City Hall.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Let's go.
Do not march on City Hall.
Do not march on City Hall.
Do not march.
I was kidding.
Look, you have one of the greatest mayors, I think, in the country, who's spent time in Ottawa. He understands the process, and I think what you can do is continue to do more. But I was blown away with the response we had coming into today, and I think it speaks to the momentum that we have going. So, what you can do is follow us on Twitter, go on Facebook, tell your friends about it. We love that, that there's 6 teams already with names here, with their own hats and their T-shirts, and it's, the groundswell is what we're looking for. So the enthusiasm, the momentum that we have, that's what you can keep doing.
Yeah, and layering on that, and I think that this is Bruce's point, is, be vocal in your support, because I hate to break the news to you, and be a big surprise. There's going to be some naysayers, so I could say that you could go beat the crap out of them, but that's probably the wrong way to do it. Just explain thoughtfully why.
We'll edit that.
We'll explain thoughtfully why you support it. And I think people need to hear that. And to your point that you made earlier about the economic improvement it brings to the region, people need to hear that. I think just being vocal is incredibly important.
Yeah. And I also think, the things that the Commissioner talked about in terms of, the CFL getting more involved locally here through, through membership in the CFL, we'll see more of that'll give you a chance to participate.
So if I can add, because I can't begin to thank you enough for that question. First of all, the spirit of that question and your response to it is amazing. I think it's a lot of things, the things that Bruce and Anthony have said. Well, maybe not the one thing that Anthony said. But it's about demonstrating your fandom. So look, I'd ask you, watch our games. because driving our TSN ratings, and TSN will be watching. They're a huge partner in our league. They're going to be watching to the fandom and see what the response from the idea of a franchise here will be. You know, for that young lady who from Saskatchewan who's attending university, you know, get your friends together and go and watch our games. I think the more there is a strong feeling and appearance of your support for our league and for a team, the more momentum we create here through the actual participating in Canadian Football League football is going to go a long way to helping keep the momentum, driving us through, getting past whatever little road bumps. We haven't had any so far, but they will be there. All of that will help contribute to the momentum that would be necessary to get this thing ultimately into the end zone.
What the commissioner's saying is march on City Hall.
Right.
So,
Well, I gotta say, Halifax, let's get to
Look,
it.
if I
Like,
knew
we
my
deserve
term
this.
more.
Let's get on it. Let's get on
get this out of the
Facebook.
way.
Let's get on Twitter. Let's start. Let's get some buzz going. We deserve this. We deserve it.
you shouldn't march on City Hall. I'm only kidding. Go ahead, sir. Next question.
Hi, thanks for coming. Thanks for actually attempting to put Halifax on the map. We're really glad to have the CFL Commissioner and everybody here. My question is about the excitement that's here behind Halifax. I've often wondered if the CFL has ever considered expanding to smaller cities like Halifax, St. John, New Brunswick, or Fredericton, New Brunswick, Moncton, like having a division in Atlantic Canada, a PEI team, a Newfoundland team, a Nova Scotia team, and a Halifax team, but also doing that like in Quebec with smaller cities like Hull versus Quebec, Montreal, well in Toronto, but maybe 2 teams in Montreal, 2 teams in Toronto. Has the CFL ever thought about expanding into smaller markets other than like small cities like Halifax and Moncton?
Sir, this is your chance to announce the Maritime Division of the CFL.
Sir, I mean, that has got to be, like, you're getting a gold star, you know. But no, you know, funnily enough, if you look at Premier League soccer in England, one of the reasons why it has been so strong is because it is community-based. And those community teams are so close to one another in proximity, it's created rivalries. It's an example of a model. Now, frankly, that league has kind of grown to a proportion that is significantly beyond that community basis. But it's not the craziest idea in the world. I think we should focus on one great team in the region as a starting spot. But ultimately, what we know about fandom is that it's changing, and what you're not hearing, I don't think anyone's asked the question about stadium size, but what we're seeing cities and teams talking about now is getting out of the era of gigantic stadiums. I think that in order to make sure that the future of the game is done right, you've got to get your proportions correct. Because you want those full stadiums. You don't want these gigantic places that are almost impossible to fill, or you can only fill them from time to time. So there's a lot of these things that Anthony and Bruce are talking about with their partners, and they will be talking about with the levels of government and getting that sizing right. It does mean that in the future, we'll get this 10th franchise. I believe in my heart it's going to happen because we've got the right time and place and the right people. But it does say that you don't have to be gigantic cities anymore to necessarily play and be in this space. So, that's just a thought around the future of our game. But for now, I think a 10th franchise that completes the set, from one end of our country to the other is probably the best place to start.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Rick Grant. I was an alderman in Halifax at the time of the one in the 80s. When it came along, in fact, I was very involved with that as an alderman. And I do want to assure everyone here, from what I've read, what I've heard, and you've said today, is this is a lot different 1,000 times different than the presentations we had in the past. I can assure people that you guys are really doing a lot of groundwork that wasn't done before. So.
Can you give us, what were some of the missteps? It didn't work in
I'm not gonna
1982
give you
because
that.
of what?
There was a lot.
There was a lot, yeah?
Yeah, there was a lot. But I'm just really impressed, and I thank you for that. I've been a CFL fan since my uncle gave me a football from BA and a little booklet from Bud Grant, which goes way back. But anyway, in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But I think that's extremely important, that what you've done, and I really do compliment you on that. And for everyone here, they deserve our compliment, and please, give them this. One other thing I'd like to mention, because I'm president of the Celtic Cultural Society of Nova Scotia, but in 2021, it is the 400th anniversary of the naming of Nova Scotia. So think about that for a great cup.
Hey. To our right, go ahead, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
First, just want to thank you for coming to Halifax. You picked a really good day for it. It's not always this sunny and stuff. Actually, I had some ice fog the last couple days. Second, I just want to say it's really great coming here and seeing the amount of enthusiasm for a CFL team in Halifax. It's been great. I wasn't initially aware that the sort of support that it had here. But one of the things I want to raise here, sorry, I'm going to be one of those naysayers that was brought up earlier.
Better watch out, I might come beat the crap out of you.
Yeah. So but I have no issue with a CFL team coming to Halifax. But I kind of have to be the guy at the party that everyone hates to talk to, because I have some concerns over the use of public funding for any sort of stadium proposal. So the numbers I've been hearing thrown around is between $200,000 to $300,000 for a new stadium. I think that's.
I wish that was the case. I think you need 200 to 300 million.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Yeah. Okay. So that just goes even further. So, anyways, it's a significant expenditure that's coming here. So one of my concerns that I have with this being public funding is, and it's one of my pet peeves whenever this sort of topic comes up, is we talk about the economic benefits of a stadium. However, overwhelmingly, we see that sports economists have shown that there is pretty much a negligible effect on the overall economy in the building of a stadium. We have Moshe Lander, who's from Concordia University, who has come forward, and he said he actually supports the idea of a CFL team here in Halifax, but he said he would support no public funding of it because it would be a waste of money. And this isn't just here, about 87% of economists polled in the US said that they would not support any public use of funding for building of a stadium. And also a recent study came out from Stanford, and it was the same deal. He said there's basically a negligible effect on the building of a stadium to the overall economy. And if you were to remove all the sports teams from Chicago, the Chicago economy might not even notice, right? And this is where the Chicago Blackhawks play. This is a pretty big sports town. So my issue with that is when we start talking about economic impact analyses, what we often don't discuss is the opportunity cost. So these are us spending money on this instead of spending money on something else. So one reason it doesn't usually generate a lot is because people are just spending money going to a CFL game rather than saying going and spending their money downtown or going to a Moosehead game or going down to Beerley's for a show or something like that. The other issue is that, we talked about how we deserve a stadium, and I agree. But we also deserve a lot of things here in Nova Scotia. And just some things that maybe, folks might not be aware of, but we recently came out, 1 in 5 children in Halifax living in poverty. It's up to 40% in some communities. We have the lowest minimum wage in the country, and a minimum, a livable allowance or livable wage ordinance for Halifax would be about 1% of the overall wage budget for Halifax, something around there. And that's just to allow people to, to live and make decisions about what they want to eat.
If I can, I don't want to interrupt you, but I know we've been sitting here for a couple of hours. I think that, one of the things that's been different about this time around is we've been incredibly thoughtful about looking at all of the models out there for stadiums across the country that work and doing it in a way that, isn't just about putting a hand out and asking taxpayers to fund a stadium. I mean, the stadium will be, $200+ million. The development that we're envisioning will be several $100 million, and it'll involve residential real estate, so condominiums, townhouses. It will involve retail, it will involve commercial, it will involve parkland, similar to what you see in Lansdowne. So any of the conversations we've had, we've been remarkably sensitive to the fact that it has to be revenue neutral. We're not looking to take money out of taxpayers' pockets to build a stadium. Anything we've envisioned and talked to government about is revenue neutral. And there is a significant economic impact. I mean, the Grey Cup in Ottawa generated $100 million in revenue over the course of 3 days.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but also I think the numbers that just came out from the group that owns and operates Lansdowne, they actually had a $14.4 million shortfall in the year that they won the Grey Cup, and they actually said it was because of the of planning and spending on the Grey Cup. So.
But we're talking about the economic impact on the region and the city, not on the owners. As Anthony said, we didn't get into this to lose money. We didn't get into this to come here and get rich. It's, a lot of it has to do with doing the right thing for the region. So, I respect what you say, and our response is we're very mindful of the fact that anything we do is not going to be a drain on taxpayers. End of story.
And as a matter of fact.
And I don't want to cut you short, but we could have the conversation. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. We could have the conversation, for hours about all of the impacts. But I think what we're trying to do here today is get the early part of the message out that we're not here for a tax grab. We're here to build momentum around something that when I say the region deserves a stadium, that's not a tax grab. That's saying we should take pride in being a region that can have its own stadium and host these events.
And that in itself is part of the economic development engine that is part of a team. If you didn't see, you should look at the package that Amazon put out for their Amazon HQ2. One of the aspects that they were looking for is entertainment and these types of activities so they could recruit people to the whatever region they ended up putting their headquarters. So the concept of having professional sports is actually important to companies when they're looking at placing locations, because they want to ensure that they can recruit, especially in this day and age, in technology, which is a sector I came from as one of the early guys at BlackBerry, recruiting people is very, very difficult, and you have to be able to provide them with things that they need. And Bruce's point of the $100 million economic impact for Ottawa, that was real money that was spent in the region by people who wouldn't have spent it on other things in Ottawa. They would have spent it on other things in other parts of the country that they live in. And by the way, just my final point, this is a regional play, and yes, we are looking here in Nova Scotia, but Nova Scotians won't be the only people coming to this. There will be a number of people coming in from New Brunswick. There will be a number of people from PEI, Newfoundland. I haven't talked to a single fan of the CFL who hasn't said, we can't wait for Halifax to have a team so we can come from Calgary and BC. So this will be, regardless of how we look at it, there is no question there will be an economic benefit to this region.
Okay. So, can I interpret your comments? Can we interpret your comments to be that the cost of the stadium will largely be borne by private interests, and that you won't be seeking?
You said that earlier.
But I think the cost of the project, right? So
the project.
The money that will be spent outside of the stadium around the project will be hundreds of millions of dollars.
I'm just concerned about the stadium itself.
Yeah. So
no, we know.
So is it your assertion, there are stadiums across the country, is it your assertion that none of those stadiums should have been built if they have government money in them?
It's not my assertion, it's the assertion of most economists.
Oh, no, but you frame it, I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of the economic consensus.
Okay.
It's not hard to look up, but it's something that seems to be overlooked in a lot of these conversations.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
If I can.
Yes, please, sir.
Perhaps it's just something to add to the narrative. One of the things that I have come to appreciate and understand about the power of sport is how it changes lives. And I can say personally, growing up with the heroes that I had as a young person watching, whether it was hockey or football, led me to aspiring to be an athlete myself, and ultimately had a tremendous effect on my life. I think that the benefit of having professional teams with these great young men and women, the Olympians that we're currently watching, extends well beyond economic benefits, and it extends into the social benefits of sport and what it does for, what it does in communities and what it does for a nation when young people can look up and see people to aspire to be more like. And while I completely respect your willingness to come here, I just think that part of the conversation about why has to include the broader benefits of just what it can do to change and shape the future of a community when you have a team and people playing at the level that these athletes play at.
Thank you for your answers.
So we have 3 more questions from the crowd, then we have a little draw to do here as we start to wind down our town hall meeting. Let's go to back to the Blue Bombers again. Hello, sir. Hey.
Hey, I'll get you at the next game. Hi, I'm Stan. I'm grew up in Winnipeg going to Bomber games as a kid, and I moved here 35 years ago, and football drought, okay? Had to settle for watching it on TV and getting to the odd game when I was posted in the military. But my question is the fan experience. I've been to tailgates in Winnipeg where we barbecue and everything behind our cars, and that's traditional tailgating. Is there any plan, I know we're early in the process, but to have like real tailgate parties behind your car? I understand liquor laws, but we could get around that.
So he's skipping the franchise, skipping the stadium, and going right for the pregame celebration. All right.
I got the brisket going in the back right now.
So one of the exciting parts about the ownership group right now is that we have Anthony LeBlanc here, who was, for those of you who don't know this, was president of Phoenix Coyotes and one of the owners of Phoenix Coyotes, understands, the Phoenix Coyotes, if you have been to a game there in Phoenix, it is, sort of live, work, play. They've made it into an event. So, Anthony, we've talked about this. I think we've got somebody that really understands how to do that.
Well, gee, thank you.
That's my way of avoiding the question.
No, that's right. No, but it's funny. The tailgate experience. I mentioned I'm a Red Blacks season ticket holder. I'm also a season ticket holder of an NFL team, and it's a wonderful experience going for that full day of the tailgate. But you nailed it. There are some rules and regulations that are in place that But having that said, you've seen in a number of the Canadian stadiums them kind of creating these new environments. And again, you go to what you know, which for me is Ottawa, and you go to Lansdowne before a game, and while it's not a traditional tailgate that you're referencing, it is a real tailgate environment at all the restaurants and the bars and the facilities that they have there. But I agree with you. There's nothing better to me at a football game than starting off with tailgating. So it's something we'll definitely look into as much as we can.
Nothing better than bacon wrapped scallops on the barbecue.
Yes.
I'll come to your tailgate for sure.
You're from Winnipeg originally?
No, I just grew up there as a teen.
Well, but you've been here for 35 years?
Yeah.
You're all Nova Scotia now, man. Nice job. Nice job. All right.
This jersey comes off when we get a team.
Okay. Number 16, go ahead.
How you doing? My name's Matt Lane. I'm his brother.
Are you serious?
Yeah. No, way younger.
You want to talk about tailgating?
And I'm very confused. I got every CFL team. We need a team. I got every CFL team. Right now, I'm from St. John, New Brunswick, so my wife and I came up here for this. And we had we had a game there years ago. The Bombers were playing. I think they lost, of course. But it just wasn't the same. There was no enthusiasm. But my question to you is, being from another city, your focus is on Halifax. I get that. I'm committing to season tickets when they come right now. So I don't care where it is, I'll go. But I'm just wondering, and some other people probably wondering from out of the Halifax area, what kind of support that you guys have from other major cities in the Maritimes, Charlottetown, St. John, Fredericton, Moncton. Apparently may have blown it. I don't know what happened. I went to my kid was a kid captain for one of the games. We had an awesome experience. But your commitment is Halifax. Awesome. I'm there. I just want to know the support that you have from other major cities, including St. John's, Newfoundland, all the major cities in the Maritimes.
So our play has always been about a regional play, and as much as I would love to see a stadium in Halifax, unless we're going to do something with the Citadel Hill, it's probably not going to be in the city of Halifax. So it's about the region, and anything we've talked about, any of the we've had lots of discussions with the province and outside of the province. We see it as being fed by the maritime provinces. And look, I've been amazed and encouraged by the fact that if IKEA can draw as many people from the region as it does, surely we can do it with the football team. I think you should shop at IKEA and get a season ticket.
Buy a weird bed, go to a game.
I did not say that.
But it's, to layer into Bruce's comment, that has always been, and the one thing we've said, we've been asked about the name, and no, we don't know what the name is yet, but we do know that it will not be the Halifax, Teamy McTeam face. It'll be Atlantic, and that's really important.
Ottawa, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. My name is Monica Lane, wife to Matt, sister-in-law to Stan. It's a family affair today. My question is, the Maritimes has some unique weather that the rest of the country doesn't experience. Fog, hurricanes, we get some crazy weather. I know weather's part of the game, but when the fog comes in so thick that you can't see the next step ahead of you, that could cause some major delays. So when it comes to building the stadium, are you considering the maritime weather in the construction of the stadium? And what do you have in mind to deal with unique weather situations?
I've had these thoughts. I must admit, it's a very good question.
Very good question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we've hired a world-class consulting company that specializes in building stadiums, and they're working with us on looking at sites. I mean, Anthony can talk better to the to the actual stadium end of it, but I mean, having attended the Grey Cup in Ottawa last year, I can't imagine weather conditions that could, I mean, it wasn't fog that you couldn't see the ball with, it was snow. And I mean, I think that's one of the great things about, Canadian football is we play in this weather, and, we'll figure it out. I mean, if we have to put fans in to blow the fog out, we'll figure it out. We'll play on fog-free days, we'll figure it out. But look, before we wind up, I know you're going to wind up here in a second. It's hard to get this many people to attend a 20-minute event. So to have you come here for 2 hours today, I know that some have had to leave to go back to work, and show this type of enthusiasm, I got to tell you, as a future owner, potential owner, it is a huge encouragement for myself, and I know for Anthony. When we were looking at the crowd walking in here, we say, you're not going to fill up these seats, are you? And so thank you for coming here today and giving us 2 hours of your time.
Gentlemen, we have a draw to do. We're going to pick, I think, 3 names from a bin. Commissioner, any parting thoughts on the subject before we exit the stage?
Just to echo the thank yous for coming out and being part of this national conversation. You are part of the CFL family. You will be for forever and ever. Part of this great league. This is Canada. This is our game. This is our league. I think we're sitting today with wonderful potential partners that will add value to what we're building with the CFL. I think this is part of an ongoing, it's just a starting spot now for an ongoing conversation about how we grow a bigger, better, stronger league together. I'd like to invite all of you to know that your feedback is welcome. This is not the end of the conversation, but as I say, just merely the beginning. And I can't thank you enough for coming out and being part of the day. So thank you very
much. So ladies and gentlemen, LeBlanc, Browser, and Ambrosie coming to the Maritimes, coming to Halifax today to, as I put it earlier, wrapping their arms around this enthusiasm. Another big round of applause, please, for these 3 gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right. We have 3 prizes to give away. When we pull your name from the stainless steel vault and put your hand in there, if you announce your name, you can go to the desk at the front of the room. So 3 guests on stage, 3 people to make a draw. Draw 1 for you, please.
Oh, my brother.
Really?
No, Peter Fitzgerald.
Peter Fitzgerald.
All right, Peter.
Oh, I got 2. Is it Kirk? Ooh. Yowlish?
Y-A.
We'll call you Kirk. We got your number.
We get your phone number. Yeah. Last one, sir.
Okay. That one right from the very bottom there.
Nice.
There we go.
John McLeod.
John McLeod.
John McLeod.
John McLeod.
John McLeod, you hear?
We got your number. All right.
John McLeod. Awesome. So folks, first of all, as they exit the stage, feel free to chat with them. They're here for a while. Media's at the back of the room. They're going to go through Olivier for media availability for these 3 gentlemen as well. This will turn into a de facto press event at the back of the room, but it's also an opportunity for some of you to stick around and meet these gentlemen as well. This is a great day in the Maritimes. It's a great day in Nova Scotia. The sun is shining. It's Friday payday, and football is coming to Halifax. So thank you very much. Oh, thanks.